Hello and good morning, everyone. It's Donna Gray here, your Stampin' Up demonstrator from the Scenic Rim in Queensland. And I'm super excited to be bringing you another beginner card class. So, beginner card class number 2. So, when I started crafting, the way I actually learned was from binge watching a lot of videos and being able to see things actually happen before my eyes for me to learn actually how to craft. And so I decided what I wanted to do was bring a series of beginner card making classes for the brand new crafters to teach you tips and tricks of how to make your crafting easier. So as you can see, the heading today is my never fail method of cutting card bases and card layers. Now, this method can be used no matter what country you live in. It can be adapted to your cardstock size. So no matter what country you're in, when I show you this awesome method, you will think to yourself, why didn't I know this before? And this has made life so much easier. And I can tell you, this never fail method actually makes creating any layers for anything so much easier. So, hello and welcome. I can see I've got a few of you on this morning. So, please feel free to share this onto your social media site. So, if you're watching on YouTube, please feel free to share it back onto Facebook. And we are going to have some awesome fun showing you actually how to make the perfect layer and just showing you some tips and tricks of what I use and what I've been using ever since I've started crafting. So one of the things is knowing your cardstock. So making sure that you are knowing what type of cardstock you're working with and what type of cardstock goes where. So we at Stampin' Up, we have a couple of different thicknesses of cardstock. So in our basic white and our very vanilla, we have what we call basic white thick and basic white very vanilla. Sorry, very vanilla thick. Sorry, not basic white, very vanilla. Okay, so we have basic white thick and we have very vanilla thick. Now those thick cardstocks are designed for card bases. Now, the difference between a card base to a layer, you need the thickness and the structure of a card base to actually make sure that your card feels sturdy and has the strength to hold everything else that you're going to put on your card. So it's really, really important to make sure you use the right cardstock for the right card base or for the layers. Now, the other thing is all of our colored cardstock is equivalent. It's a little bit thinner, but it does the exact same job as our basic white thick and our very vanilla thick. So all of our colored cardstock we can use as card bases. All of our basic white thick we can use for card bases, and our very vanilla thick we can use for card bases. Even our black we can use for card bases. So I wanted to make sure that you know the difference between that now, before we get started, to know what you use for your card bases and what you use for your layers. Okay, so I can see quite a few of you are jumping on. So welcome. We have Deborah, Bree, Jeanette, Sue. Hello, welcome. And another Jeanette. Hello, welcome. So, oh no, sorry, the same Jeanette. Jeanette saying hi to Deb. So please make sure you let all of your friends know. If you're brand new to crafting and or even if you've been crafting for a while and you're learning things from these beginner card classes, then by all means, please feel free to share with your friends. You can share it on YouTube. Down the bottom, there's a little share button. Down the bottom of the video, you can actually see it's a share with a little arced arrow. You can actually share via Messenger. You can share back onto your Facebook. You can even share the link of the video with friends. So this is actually going to be content that I'm telling you. You are going to be so happy that you have joined today, because I'm going to simplify things when it comes to your card bases and your layers. I'm going to simplify things as easy as exactly what it says, my never fail method of cutting card bases and envelopes. We should learn something new every day. Exactly, Deborah. We're never too old to learn something new, and you never know. You always can learn something new each and every day. So that's my motto, and I like to live by it as well. All right. So I'm going to pop you down onto my desk, and I want to tell you some of the things that we're going to need today to be able to do this. So of course I've got the two different types of white cardstock here, and you're going to need a paper trimmer, and mine's a little bit grotty, but it does the job. It needs a good clean, but we're going to need one of our paper trimmers. So last week in that beginning crafting session, I told you some of the tools that you need to get started. A paper trimmer is a must. Hello, Maureen from Toowoomba. Am I blurred? Well, am I blurry for anyone else? It's clear as a bell on my screen. So anyone else? Do you have any blurred vision? Is it blurry for anyone else? Because it shouldn't be. It should be all okay, and I'm on the right internet. So maybe go out and come back in again. Or maybe if you've got some windows opened on your computer, maybe close it down a little bit. All right. So hello, Sam. All good for you, Deborah. Well done. Okay, so we've got thick cardstock. So I just want to show you. I mean, it's very hard to see the difference, but this is fairly thick and fairly sturdy. This is our normal basic white, and as you can see, a lot thinner, not as sturdy and a lot thinner. Okay, so our thick card base is always what we need to be using. It's not blurry for you either, Sam, or good for Jeanette. Okay, so for Maureen, maybe go out and come back in again, or maybe even check your internet. Okay, so I'm going to start off with our thick cardstock. And I'm also going to describe the very first thing that I always do with my cardstock. So we have A4 cardstock. So A4 cardstock is 8 1/4 inches this way, and it's 11 3/4 inches that way. So this cardstock is the same size as European. So if you live in the UK, we have the same size cardstock. In America, they have it 8 1/2 inches this way by 11 inches. So theirs is about like that and a little bit wider. So shorter and wider. Okay. But this never fail method is going to work no matter what when it comes to your card base sizes. Now, I don't cut my A4 in half and use it exactly in half, because the problem is whenever we have A4 cardstock, it may not be cut exactly A4. Okay, so this never fail method means that you will have the exact right size card bases each and every time that you cut your card bases. So this is my white thick card base. Now, I always cut along the long side for my card bases. I always cut along this long side because I can get 2 card bases out of one A4 sheet, and I can get 4 layers out of an A4 sheet. So if you use this never fail method, I am telling you, you will definitely not go wrong. Okay. So, and I'm actually going to do a PDF as well of this this never fail method. I'm going to do a PDF, and it will cost $5 for the PDF to actually download the PDF, but I'm actually going to do a PDF with all of these measurements and pictures to actually show you exactly how to do these measurements. But I'm going to show you here in person online. So now our handy dandy trimmer, we have our inch measurements along the top, and we have inch measurements down this way. Now, I work with inches, and the reason that I work with inches is because inches is an easy way for me. I'm going to get a cleaner paper trimmer. That one looks pretty grotty, so I'm going to get a cleaner one out. Inches works really well for me in the way that I cut my card bases. So you can actually change it to metric. So when you actually look across here where I cut, you can see what the metric conversion is, but metric does my head in. So I apologize for any of the metric people out there, but I am actually going to do this in inches. Okay. So you can see here that we have our paper trimmer, and it goes right up to 17 inches over the side here. Well, we don't actually need to go to the full 17 inches. So as you can see here, we have 11 3/4 inches. So you can see here it's gone to 11 3/4 inches. And if I go this way, it will show 8 1/4 inches. Okay. So 11 3/4 and 8 inches, 8 1/4 inches. So you've got to remember that that is our A4 cardstock. So the first thing that I'm actually going to do is I'm going to cut 2 card bases. So out of every A4 sheet of cardstock, we can get 2 card bases. So I'm just going to show you with the white thick cardstock how we can get 2 card bases. So my ultimate measurement for a card base, now half of this 11 3/4 is actually 5 7/8. And I don't want to do my card base like that because then you actually are using eighths instead of quarter inches. Now I want to use quarter inches to start off with because that's the best way to actually divide. So in an inch, we have 1/4, half, 3/4, and a full inch. So our inch is divided up into 4 equal parts if we do the quarters. It's also divided up into 8 equal parts if we do the eighths. So we've got 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and 8/8. Okay, so that is 1 inch. Or we can divide it into 16ths if we do the little line, 1/16, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16. Okay, now we all did our times tables at school, I'm sure. Type into the comments and let me know who learnt their times tables at school. So 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 1 is 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 3 is 3. Who did our times tables at school? So all we've got to do is remember how to divide things. Okay, so we can divide an inch into 4 equal parts, or we can divide an inch into 8 equal parts, or we can divide an inch into 16 equal parts. Okay, so all you've got to do is remember that in 1 inch, if we want to divide it into 4 equal parts is going to be 1/4, a half, 3/4, and a full inch. Okay, so times tables comes in really, really handy when it comes to this, and that is exactly what you need to remember is in 1 inch, there is either 4 equal parts, 8 equal parts, or 16 equal parts. All you got to do is remember that. And from this time on, you will understand inch measurements by just remembering that. Okay, so out of each A4 sheet of cardstock, I can get 2 card bases. And the reason that I cut, I'm going to show you, I'm going to get a slither down one side that's going to be left over and a slither down the other side that's going to be left over. And it's actually going to be 1/4 inch on both sides that's going to be left over. And the reason why that's actually happening is because I want to make sure that my card bases are exactly the same size all the time. Okay, so my never fail method is 5 3/4 inches. So out of this, what you've got to look at in your A4 sheet of cardstock is we want to get 2 card bases. So there's 2 ways of cutting card bases. So I'm going to show you both. So we want to get 2 card bases. Now, I call a card base, there's a hamburger card base or there's a hot dog card base. And I'm going to show you both out of this when I do this. And both sizes, we're going to have the same card front size. Okay, so no matter whether you cut 2 card bases, one here and one here, or whether you cut 2 card bases, one down there and one down there, you're still going to have the same card front size if you use this method that I use. So I'm actually going to cut at 5 3/4 inches. So I'm taking my cardstock over to 5 3/4 inches and I'm going to cut. I'm going to pop that aside and I'm going to cut this one. I'm going to go through and cut it at 5 3/4 inches. Okay. So you're going to have this slither. So this is actually an 1/8 of an inch that we have here. So that slither there is going to be wastage. Then what's going to happen is we're actually going to rotate it. Okay, so we've had our A4 cardstock here. We've got 2 card bases, one here, one here. But we've got to rotate this because I like to cut them then at 8 inches. Okay, so we're going to cut a slither off there, which is going to be 1/4 inch. I'm going to take my other one and I'm going to cut a slither off. Okay. And there we have 2 card bases. 1, 2. And we have some slithers that we've got left over. So we've got these 2 off the ends of our card base and this one off the full length of our card base. That's the only wastage that you're going to have. But I actually don't, this one here I actually waste, but this one here I keep because they're fantastic for those really, really thin little sentiments. Okay, so I always keep those bits, but I do throw away this bit. But it's totally up to you if you want to keep that bit. That could be a bit that you want to do as a strip, as a decorative piece on the inside of a card. Totally up to you if you want to keep it like that. Okay, so we've got 2 card bases this way. I'm going to bring in another piece of thick cardstock. And I'm now going to cut. So this one here I call a hamburger style. And I'm just going to show you then. So if we actually score this, so this length here is the 8 inches. So remember we had our A4 cardstock like that. We've cut the slither off this side here, or maybe the top if you want to do it that way, and a slither off this side down here. Okay, so now this is actually 8 inches by 5 3/4 inches. Okay, so now what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put the 8-inch side along the top and I'm going to take it to 4 inches and I'm going to score it 4 inches. And that is actually going to give us our hamburger style card. Okay, so then as you can see here, we've got 4 inches by 5 3/4 inches. So our card front size is 4 inches by 5 3/4 inches. So I'm going to do that again. Or the other way of doing it, and I don't like to do it with thick cardstock, but the other way of doing it, so I'm scoring there again at 4 inches. The other way of doing it is using your paper trimmer and actually butting those 2 edges up and then using your bone folder to crease it. So if you want to get that perfect crease and you want to get those edges lined up, your paper trimmer is fantastic for doing that, okay? So if you struggle with trying to get them folded and getting them nice and easy, what you do is you butt that one up against there nice and level, butt the other one up against and get the 2 sides nice and level, and then use your bone folder to be able to crease it. So that there is the hamburger style. So 4 inches by 5 3/4 inches. Now, the next way is to do it what we call the tent style or the TP style, okay? So tent style means that we're going to get a longer card base and we're going to have the fold going across the top. So this one here, we can use it this way, which is portrait style. We can use it this way, which is landscape style, okay? So you can create a card either way with doing this one. The next one is we're going to have the fold coming across the top. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that. So once again, we're going to turn our cardstock the opposite way this time. So we've got 8 1/4 inches across this way. I'm actually going to do them at 4 inches because remember, our card front size here is 4 inches by 5 3/4 inches. So I'm actually going to do 4 inches there. And I'm going to move this one over and do 4 inches again. So we're going to get that slither that's going to be cut off on the side. So we have that, okay? So we can use that for our sentiments, remember? And then I'm actually going to turn them around and I'm actually going to cut them at 11 1/2. Okay, so I'm going to cut a slither off that end and a slither off that end. Now, can anyone tell me if I wanted to put a score line in these? So these are actually going to fold. So I can do it this way. So I can actually butt it up there and actually fold it over, get it butted up really nicely up against there and use my bone folder to crease it. I do normally like to score my thick cardstock so that it creases nicely. Okay, so then you'll actually have that as a tent fold. Okay, so it's one of those cards that actually stands like a tent. Okay, so then can anyone tell me, do they know the measurement of this one here? So to score it, what is half of 11 1/2 inches? So half of 11 is 5.5 inches, and we've got an extra 1/2 inch left. So half of 11 is 5.5. We've got an extra inch left that we need half of that. So that's 1/4 inch. So we've got 5.5 plus we add 1/4. So we're actually going to score at 5 3/4 inches, but it's really easy to remember at 5 3/4 inches because, as I said, my card front sizes are always the same. 4 inches by 5 3/4 inches, 4 inches by 5 3/4 inches. So just different types of cards, but the card base is always the same. Okay. So yes, by all means, Sam, share the video by all means. So there we have the way we can cut card bases. So we've used 2 pieces of our A4 cardstock. We have 2 hamburger style card bases, and we have 2 tent style, tent style card bases. Okay. So as you can see, all that is wasted out of those 2 sheets of cardstock is this tiny, tiny little bit of cardstock. Okay. So card base, always the same. I never change my card base sizes because I can ramble off layers as quick as anything because I know that every card base that I do is going to be 4 inches by 5 3/4 inches. Okay. So if you're brand new to crafting, that is the first thing that you need to know is how to make your card base. Do you want hamburger style, either portrait or landscape? Okay. You can do these in portrait and landscape as well. So you can do that one as a portrait. You can also do this one as a landscape. So just by changing the orientation of the way you have your card bases is whether you have a portrait or a landscape card base. Now, it's really important to use your bone folder to crease along your folds of your cards because creasing along the folds of your cards will give you that really nice creased, neat card base. Okay, and it will help your card base to actually sit closed by actually creasing really well. So just with your bone folder at an angle, you run your bone folder at an angle down along that crease, and then you fold it over and do it down along that crease, and you'll find then it makes your card base sit together really, really well. So that is card bases. Okay, so does everyone remember? Type into the comments and let me know. Have you learned what size is my card front size? This is your homework. What size is the card front size? How wide is it here and how long is it here? How wide is it here and how long is it here? Type it into the comments and let me know because I want to make sure that you've actually understood exactly how I've cut those card bases. So as you can see when I unfold them, that is one A4 piece of cardstock there. Okay. And if I unfold these ones, that is one A4 piece of cardstock there. Okay. So you can see here how we can get 2 long bases or we can get 2 shorter, fatter bases. So hamburger style, tent style. Okay. So type into the comments, what is the size of the card front that I've just showed you? My card front size is always the same. No, Julie. No, you nearly got it right. That's the size of the card base. Deborah, 4 inches by 5 3/4 inches. Deborah is correct. Julie, you were nearly correct, but when we fold it in half, the card front size, which is this piece here, is 4 inches by 5 3/4 inches. So if you use the score blade to make the crease, which way do you score with the bone folder? Okay, so when you actually score, so I'm going to fold this, I'm going to flip this over. So you can see here that we've got the mountain fold here. Okay. So the actual, when you score down into your cardstock. And I did actually say this last week in the beginner video. So if you didn't watch the beginner video last week, please make sure you go back and have a look at beginner card making class number 1. When you actually score with your scoring blade, you will actually create a valley in the cardstock. So when I scored with this, the valley was here. Okay. So that valley and that crease that you make in your cardstock goes to the outside of your card base. Okay, so it will always go to the outside of your card base. So you have a valley that you create with the scoring. You actually then fold against that valley. So you will have the mountain that you create with the scoring blade on the inside of your card. So the mountain is on the inside of the card. It's very hard to see, but the mountain is on the inside of the card, and the valley that you create is on the outside of the card. So when you actually create that indentation in your cardstock, you're actually stretching the fibers of the cardstock, and then that's allowing you to fold against where you've stretched it, because it's relaxed them and it stops that cracking and making that fold really horrible on the outside. So some cardstock is really bad with it, with that cracking and making, and sometimes it can tear along the cardstock. And if you've ever had that problem, a lot of the time it's probably because you're folding it the wrong way against your score line. Your score line should always be that you have the indentation going down into your card and you fold against that indentation. So wherever you have that trough in your scoring, that goes to the top of your card, and wherever the mountain, the hillside of your scoring, that goes to the inside of your card. Okay. All right. So everyone has scored perfect points, 100% points for getting the card front sizes the right size. Okay. So now, because we've got our card base going the right way, now anything with our basic white for layers and for inserts in your card. So I'm going to grab, this is just our basic white. So our normal basic white cardstock. And I'm now actually going to show you how to cut your insert layers for your card. So this is an insert layer that is going to fit perfectly on the inside of your card each and every time. So once again, we're going to take that A4 sheet of cardstock. Can anyone guess? I'm actually going to go 1/4 of an inch smaller than our card front size. So if our card front size is 4 inches by 5 3/4 inches, type into the comments what you think our first layered size is going to be. If I'm going to take 1/4 of an inch off the top and 1/4 of an inch off the side, tell me what you think the card front size is going to be. So we're going to subtract 1/4 of an inch off our 4 inches. And we're also going to subtract 1/4 of an inch off our 5 3/4 inches. Okay, so that's actually going to create our first layer. And the reason why I wanted to show you this, that layer is going to act as your insert layer. It is also going to act as your first layer that you want to pop on your card. So 3 3/4 by 5 1/2. Well done, Sam. You were the first one to actually put the answer in the comments. So for me to get 4 of those insert layers out of this one sheet of basic white, now because this is basic white, it's a lot thinner. So our basic white, we get more sheets of basic white in our basic white cardstock from Stampin' Up. So you get 40 sheets, I think it is, of basic white cardstock. Yes, 40. And then in our white thick, A4 thick cardstock, we get 24 sheets. Okay, so you're going to know the difference between your basic white normal and your basic white thick, because your basic white normal, you're going to have 40 sheets in the pack. Your basic white thick, you're going to have 24 sheets in the pack. Now our colored cardstock, we have 24 sheets in the pack. So obviously our colored cardstock is the same as our thick. All right, so we're now going to get 4 layers, 4 insert layers out of this A4 sheet of cardstock. So I want to show you once again how we're going to get the best out of this cardstock. So I'm going to take my 5 1/2 inches. I'm going to take it, I can get 2 5 1/2 inches out of 11 3/4 inches. So what you've got to do is you've got to think about, when you're actually going to cut your cardstock, how can I get the best out of this cardstock to make sure that I'm not going to waste any cardstock or waste minimal amount of cardstock. We don't want to be cutting our layers the other way. Okay, so I always do my 5 1/2 inch cut first, and then I do my 3 3/4 inches. Okay, so I'm going to do 5 1/2 inches there, and I'm going to pop that aside, and then I'm going to do another 5 1/2 inches. Okay. Now, this piece here is spare. So we've got 2 5.5 inches. So it's very similar to cutting our card bases, but we're going to rotate them and we're going to cut 4 of these layers. So this piece here, you can save for sentiment strips as well. So it's a great, don't throw it out because you can actually definitely use it. Now, I'm going to put them both on top of each other. So I've got 5.5 inches this way. So I'm then going to rotate, and I want them to be 3 3/4 inches. So I'm going to rotate. I'm cutting 2 layers here because it's thinner cardstock, and our paper trimmer is awesome and it can cut through 2 layers. So I've got 3 3/4 there, and I've got 3 3/4 there. Okay, so we have 2 more strips here. Don't throw those away either because they're great for sentiment strips as well. So I keep these strips all the time, and they're great for stamping your sentiments on, and being basic white, you'll find that you will use them quite a bit. So I'm now going to space that out to our A4 sheet of cardstock again. So we've got 2 there. We've got 2 there. Okay. We've got a strip here and a strip here. And a strip there. Okay, so can you see that? We've got 4 card base layers, and we've got these strips that we've got left over. So that is our basic first layer. So I'm going to show you in colored cardstock so that you can actually see how that layer works really, really well on the front of a card. So, so that is the basic. So we've done our 5.5, 5.5. We've got that bit left over. We've rotated it and done 3 3/4, 3 3/4, and we've got these 2 bits left over. Okay. Now, when you actually are, I'm right at the tail end, I'm going to talk about American size cardstock as well. All right, so we've got those that are good for our inserts. Now I'm going to show you a colored layer so that you can see exactly how a colored layer works. So I've got our beautiful berry burst. So we have an A4 sheet again. So I'm going to cut the layer exactly the same as I just did that white insert layer. So once again, I'm going to take it to 5.5 inches and cut. Pop that one aside. 5.5 inches again and cut. So that's that long strip that we had left over. So I'll pop that aside. Then I'm going to take the 2 layers, pop them together, rotate them, and I'm going to cut them at 3 3/4. Okay, 3 3/4 and 3 3/4. Now you can keep those strips, as I said, and you can use them for sentiment strips or strips to decorate. So we now have, no different to how we just did our first one. We have that, we have that, we have our 2 pieces here, and of course our piece just there. Okay, so no different to how we just cut that insert layer. But what I want to show you is, this is our hamburger style. Okay, so this is our hamburger style. We're going to layer that on the front. Now, can you see that we have an even border all the way around? So we've got 1/8 of an inch there, 1/8 of an inch there, 1/8 of an inch there, and 1/8 of an inch there. Now, the scenario is we just took 1/4 of an inch off this way and 1/4 of an inch off that way. Okay, so I'm not going to show the white on the inside, but once you pop that on your inside of your card, you can see you've got a perfect layer for the inside of your card as well. Okay, so that actually goes to show, by just taking that 1/4 of an inch off, we get that beautiful border all the way around. Okay, so now I want to show you that on the tent style card as well. Where's our tent style card? Here it is here. So remember, this is our hamburger style one. This is our tent style one. And bam, look at that. Same size all the way around. Okay, just by taking that 1/4 of an inch off. So because we had 4 inches there, we took it down to 3 5 3/4. Because we had 5 3/4 inches here, we took it down to 5.5. Okay, so that gave us that perfect border. So when you're brand new to crafting, it's really hard to try and work out exactly how to actually cut those layers. Now, I actually have people that I still see that they measure with a ruler and just take their cardstock, measure and put a little mark on their cardstock and do it. But if you keep to this method, you'll have no problem ever layering up any layers. So I'm now going to go through. So we've got that one there. So I'm just going to keep that there to show you. So we've got our white insert layer. We've also got our colored layer. So I'm now going to cut a smaller one again to show you how we can step it down to another layer. So let's bring in some more beautiful paper. Some cardstock. Let's bring in our bubble bath this time. So we've got bubble bath. Okay. So now we've taken 1/4 inch off our basic card base size. Okay. So we've taken 1/4 inch off there, 1/4 inch off there, and that's what's actually given us this size here, which that was 3 3/4 by 5.5. So if we take 1/4 size off the berry burst layer, and instead of 3 3/4, we do that at 3.5, and instead of 5.5 here, we do it at 5 1/4. Let's see how that works. So once again, 5.5. Always take my 5-inch measurements across this way. So always do my larger measurement first to get the 4 layers out of each. So we are now going to go to 5 1/4 inches. Okay, so the last time we did 5.5. This time we're going to do 5 1/4 inches for those two. Once again, you've got a wider piece of cardstock left there. Then I'm going to put them together, rotate them, and instead of 3 3/4, we're going to actually do 3.5 inches. And 3.5 inches. Okay. So that is then going to give us the perfect layer to layer up on our berry burst layer that we're going to get that 1/8 of an inch border all the way around. So you can see there, by then adding that to our card base, we've got perfect layers happening all the way around. So can you see, by just taking off that 1/4 of an inch, you're going to get that perfect layer all the way around. Now, I'm actually going to do a PDF that I'm going to keep going with these layers to show you exactly how you can get these perfect layers happening. Now, there's another measurement that I do, which I absolutely love. So I'm gonna do that and leave that there. So the next thing I want to show you is what happens if we have a strip of cardstock that we want to create a layer for. So in other words, okay, so let's take this. We've got this this was our first layer that we did at 5.5. So let's take this to 2 inches. Okay, so we've got a strip here, 2 inches by 5.5. Now, what about if we wanted to put a layer, a bubble bath layer on top of that, and we want to get that 1/8 of an inch border all the way around? So we've got 2 inches this way, we've got 5.5 inches that way. All right, so if I take 1/4 of an inch off 2 inches, we've got 1 3/4. If I take 1/4 of an inch off 5.5, I've got 5 1/4. So let's do 1 3/4 by 5 1/4. Oh, I already had it at 5 1/4 because that was the other layer that we did. So 1 3/4 by 5 1/4, and bam, look at that. Okay. So now by doing that 1/4 of an inch, you can get perfect layers each and every single time. Now, what happens if you decided that you wanted to have a bigger border than that? Okay, So then you can play around with what size you want to do. You can do a bigger border. So what happens if I took, instead of 1/4 of an inch off there, I took 1/2 an inch off there. So let's use a different color again. So let's use, I did have some here. So I didn't confuse you. Oh, I did have some. I had a piece of, there it is, Blackberry Bliss. Okay, so what happens if we wanted to have a little bit more of a border? So we've got, this one here is 3 3/4, and this one here is 5 1/2 on our berry burst. So what happens if we go 5 and we go 5 inches? So let's do a 1/2 an inch smaller. So that was 5 1/2 inches. So we're going to do that at 5. And this one was 3 3/4. So let's do it at 3 1/4. Okay, so we've taken a 1/2 an inch off because we want to get a bigger border. Okay. And there you have a bigger border again because we've taken 1/2 an inch off. So this is definitely a no-fail method of dropping down either 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch. Now, if you wanted a finer border than the 1/8 of an inch border, you go down by an 1/8 of an inch, not 1/4 of an inch. If you want a larger border, you go down by 1/2 an inch, not 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so does everybody understand when it comes to how to do those layers? Does that help you with working out how to work out those layers? So a no-fail method is by knowing your card base size and sticking to a basic card base size. If you stick to the same card base size, you can pump out layers as quick as Joe Blow, because I'm telling you, you just use that method of going down by 1/4 of an inch, going down by 1/2 an inch. However you want to do your layers is by how much you actually smallen that layer. So always say, start with your card base size, know what your card front size is, which my card base size is always 5 3/4 inches by 8 inches. My first card layer size is always 5 1/2 inches by 3 3/4 inches. And my card front size is always the same. Now, that's why people say to me, how can you pump out all of those measurements when it comes to layers? How do you know exactly what you've done? And the fact is, I work from my card front size. I work down from that. So I work out how many inches I take off that definite card front size. So if you simplify your card front sizes to make the measurements easier, make the measurements clearer. So if I actually did exactly a 1/2 a sheet of cardstock, what actually happens is 1/2 a sheet of cardstock is 5 7/8, and you start working in 1/8 of an inch instead of 1/4 inches. Now, the best way to get your measurements in your brain when it comes to inches is to actually work just with 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, 3/4 of an inch, and a full inch. That is the easiest way to start. Once you get those measurements down pat, you can start playing around and go into 1/8 of inches or 1/16 of an inch. But until you actually get the 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, and a full inch down pat, I suggest just stick to those. Just divide that 1 inch into 4 equal parts, and the 4 equal parts gives you 1/4 of an inch each time. Okay. So thank you very much for attending my beginner card class number 2, teaching you my never fail method of cutting card bases and layers. And you can never go wrong. If you stick to that method, you can never go wrong. Now, when it comes to American size card bases, now I know that a lot of people from America and from around the world follow me and they say, but that's not American, that's not US card base sizes. If you stick to the no-fail method, now, of course, Americans have cardstock that is 8 1/2 inches by 11 inches. So, of course, When you actually do half of 11 inches is 5.5 inches. So their card base is going to be squattier than ours and a little bit wider than ours. It's going to be 1/4 inch wider than ours. Okay. So their card front size. So if you're American and you're watching this, your card base size should be 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches. Correct? Yes, 8.5 wide, 5.5. 5.5 by 8.5 inches is your card base size. So, of course, when that is folded in half, sorry, 5.5 by 8.5. Sorry, it's 11 by 8.5. It's 11 by 8.5, and it gives your card front size. It should be 5.5 by 4.25. Okay, 5.5 by 4.25. But as I said, when you get your when you get your when you get your card base size, the card front size, you then can go down by 1/4 inch. Every single time, take 1/4 inch across the top, 1/4 inch down the side, and you will find that you will get those perfect layers each and every time. Can you give details of on stage? So on stage for us, Julie, so Julie's a part of my team. So on stage is something that when you're a Stampin' Up demonstrator, we get to get together with all of our crafty demonstrator friends. And on stage is going to be in Melbourne, and it's going to be, this is for next year, so for 2024, it's going to be March 14th to March 16th at the Melbourne Convention Centre. So at the Melbourne Convention Centre, there's a lot of hotels and things that are around the Melbourne Convention Centre. And what we actually do is it's for Stampin' Up demonstrators only, and it's a great event. We have it once a year. We're missing out on it this year. We're just having it online this year. But next year, we're actually going to have it as an in-person event. And at the in-person event, you get together with your Stampin' Up friends. You get to swap with other demonstrators, which is really, really fun. And it's something that if it's your first onstage event, it's really fun to participate in swapping. So you don't have to make any certain amount of swaps. It's up to you however many swaps you want to make. And you actually create one type of card, like one you can do a couple of different types of cards if you want to, but normally what happens is you make 10 or 20 or however many cards you want to do, all of the same design, exactly the same, and you make, say, 20 cards. You take 20 cards along with you. You make sure that you have your name, where you're from, maybe a recipe of what you've actually used to create the card, and you swap with other demonstrators. So what happens is if you've made 20 cards and you swap with 20 people, you get 20 different cards back. So it's great for your inspiration, and it's a really fun event. It is great just to mix with other demonstrators. And I always say you get to see new demonstrations of new products. You actually get to craft with new products, which is really, really fun. And you also get to take home, they have prize patrols. So you get to take home product from the onstage event, and you get to gather and get to meet new team members that you haven't met in person before. I always love it because I get to meet people that are around Australia that are in my team. I get to meet you face to face, which is fantastic. And it's more or less just a Stampin' Up party. So it's a great time to gather, and it's what fills our cup. It what gets us to actually meet other demonstrators and like-minded people that do what we do. And it's going to be, as I said, on the 14th to the 16th of March next year. So people normally arrive on the Thursday. You stay the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, and then travel home on the Sunday. Maybe for you, Julie, I'm not sure. You may want to travel home on the Saturday, but it does normally end later Saturday afternoon. And I like to get together with my team and have a meal together somewhere. So somewhere close, because we always stay within the vicinity of where the actual function is being held. But it's a great fun event. Now, if you want to come to these events, then by all means, take me up on the joining offer for June, where you get to choose $283 worth of product and you only pay $169. So if you're brand new to crafting, by all means, if you need to start collecting some of your supplies, the best deal in the book is to actually join and get a discount on your products. So you not only get the starter kit, which is the best deal in the book, and you get so much product, $283 just for the month of June. They've sweetened the deal. So you get $114 worth of product for free. when you pay $169. So you get to choose $283 worth of product of your own choice. You get to be a part of my crafty community where you have me in your back pocket to help you with your crafting each and every minute of the day. So by all means, if you want to attend one of these events, you have to be a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator to attend the event. And staying is a great idea, Julie, because it allows you to spend time after the event is over, or when the event finishes for the day. It allows you to spend time with other people and with team members and get to know people. Okay, so thank you everyone for watching my basic card making lesson number 2, and I will be back again next Tuesday with card making lesson number 3, where I will teach you all about the types of stamps and how to get the best stamped image. And I will teach you all the tips and tricks. So make sure you come back here next Tuesday to see your next lesson. So thank you very much, and I will see you all again soon.